Wanted to make sure my Google thing was forwarding.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Good plan.
I was practicing yesterday and it just kept freezing.
Oh, no. Oh, nice. We have some people coming on. Excellent. Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for joining our course on how to become a peer-to-peer fundraising expert. So as we get started today, we would love to hear from you. So feel free to chat us in your organization and what you're hoping to get out of this class. We're going to get started in just a few minutes. I'll introduce Kelly, who will be your teacher for our today's class and our next class as well. Just as a reminder that everything is going to be recorded, so you'll get your recording tomorrow for today's class, and you can replay that and share it with your team as well. For class 2, that's going to be next week, you'll get the invite for the Zoom conversation shortly. And any questions that you have throughout our class today, feel free to chat those in. We're going to have a whole session at the end to go over all your questions about peer-to-peer fundraising. So this class is presented by CauseVox. CauseVox is a digital fundraising platform designed to help you raise more with less effort. So you can run all your peer-to-peer fundraising, donation pages, crowdfunding, and more in less time with less hassle. So if you're not using CauseVox currently, I see some of you are familiar names, but for any of those who aren't and want to learn more, feel free to reach out to us at causevox.com, and I'd be happy to share more details about that. So let's go over some of what is included in this course and what you can expect to receive. So we'll go over to just the next slide, Kelly. Perfect.
Alrighty.
So yeah, this course is going to be delivered in the format of 2 60-minute classes. So these are interactive, like I said, so chat us in your questions. We'll get to those at the end of our conversation today. Kelly is also going to be reviewing your peer-to-peer material. She'll tell you more about how to submit that and what that will look like a little bit later on. You also get on-demand access to all of the classes for you and your team to watch anytime. And you can access the PDF slides of the course. We'll get that to you in our follow-up emails. Also, we just released our new Ultimate Guide to Peer-to-Peer Fundraising ebook. So this is brand new. We just released it on Monday. You can get this for free included with our class today. It's about 80 pages or so of really great content. And I would think of it as kind of like your textbook for the class. And this is your teacher, Kelly. So for your peer-to-peer fundraising, if you're interested, you can use our basic plan for free to run your first initiative. So if you are doing that, we also are including a free 30-minute peer-to-peer consultation with our team if you're interested in taking us up on that offer. So I know that's a lot of materials that you're going to be receiving. If you have any questions about those specifics, feel free to reach out to me in our follow-up emails. I'm so excited to have Kelly McLaughlin here to lead our class. She has been in the nonprofit industry for over 11 years, primarily in individual donor and donor fundraising and volunteer management. She is currently the Director of Marketing and Development for the Friends of the Greenbelt Theater. Kelly and I got connected a few years back when she was at the Chesapeake Climate Action Network, where she ran her peer-to-peer campaign on CauseVox, and I'm sure she's going to get into more of all of those details later. But it's so great to have you, Kelly, and so great to have you presenting. This is
thanks, Candace.
Class.
I always love working with you and Rob, so it's fun for me.
I know, it's so much fun. Go from a customer to working with us as a teacher. So
Absolutely.
thank you so much.
Yeah.
All right, I'll let you take it from here.
All righty. Well, welcome everybody. I'm excited to be here. As Candace said, I've been in fundraising for about 11 years, and I would say like my two loves in fundraising are major donor fundraising and peer-to-peer. So I'm really excited to get to share peer-to-peer and my experiences with peer-to-peer with everybody. So just a quick how we're going to structure this class. I've broken it down into preparing your campaign. How do you, if this is your first time doing a peer-to-peer campaign, how do you pick your goals and end date, decide on an event or not, and how to factor in building all of the things you need to build. Then the second thing we'll go over is how to create good campaign materials that will motivate your audience, that will make it fun for your participants, and hopefully make it really, really easy for them to fundraise for you, which is the gold in peer-to-peer fundraising. Then the third thing we'll talk about today is creating some outreach plans to guide your participants through the fundraising process. I've found that that's a really, really key part of a successful peer-to-peer campaign, is actually the hard work that you do behind the scenes to make your participants successful. And then last, we will talk about executing your campaign, how to carry it out. That will be in the second course that Candace was talking about, so that's next week. And I have also offered to review materials before that class, and we can talk about them during the class. So if you'd like to get in on that, I will, at the end of today's class, explain how to participate in that. So I also wanted to make a very quick note that I'm going to try and go over best practice right now. And this is best practice in normal times. I know COVID is impacting a lot. My personal organization, I work for a historic cinema, and we are closed right now. So our operation looks incredibly different, and our revenue streams look incredibly different. So I am 100% in it with you guys. So I want to talk about how to do peer-to-peer well in a best case scenario, and but know that the first thing that comes out of my mouth about how you should do something, I will dial it back to maybe what feels realistic to everybody right now. So anyway, but I want this to be helpful for today, and I want it to be helpful a year, 2 years from now, when you can really grow your peer-to-peer fundraising events. So just to get started, what is peer-to-peer fundraising? Peer-to-peer fundraising is any fundraising effort that relies on peers reaching out to each other on behalf of a cause. That I pulled straight off of CauseVox's website on their definition of peer-to-peer. So that's a great definition. It kind of covers everything. I would even simplify it to, it's your supporters fundraise on your behalf. That's a peer-to-peer campaign. And I will talk about a couple different ways that that can look depending on your campaign. So when I first got into peer-to-peer fundraising, I was not an expert in it. So I looked at a bunch of different organizations and what they were doing, and I reached out to folks whose campaigns really impressed me and asked them if they could tell me what they've learned over the years to make their campaign successful. And I think the most helpful thing I heard it from a number of people, but I consolidated it into its own concept here. But you have two primary growth options when it comes to peer-to-peer fundraising. And one option is to recruit more participants every single year and hope that they raise about the average. The other option is you get the same number of participants raising more money. So you can keep the number of participants the same, or you don't have to hustle quite as much. You can let it keep growing, but relatively the same number of participants, but each participant is raising more. So the average raise per participant is going up every year. And that's to me, which sounds easier to you. For me, it's definitely number two. It takes a lot more planning, it takes a lot more effort, but in the end, I think it relates to how we think about fundraising in general, right? Best practices in fundraising apply to peer-to-peer. So when we talk about it's easier to keep a donor you already have than to recruit a new donor, that's exactly the same thing in peer-to-peer. Is if you can get people to feel successful and want to participate in your campaign year after year after year, then that shows dividends over years. One of my favorite stories, somebody I've actually worked with in a peer-to-peer fundraising campaign, her first year, she only raised a couple $100s, but she did it every year for about 10 years. And by the 10th year, she was raising $7,000 a year for this nonprofit. And so that just goes to show, and it was just each year she had steady growth, and we just kept coaching her through it. So that was, that's one story among many that about why it's important to keep your participants. And why I really want to focus on that is because when I see a lot of organizations that aren't focused on supporting participants. It's about recruiting participants and then expecting them to know how to fundraise. I have a personal anecdote. I'm a runner, and I was training for a 10K last summer when we were having in-person races. And I wanted to run a 5K about halfway through my program. And so I signed up for a fundraiser 5K for a local nonprofit. And it wasn't one I had any affiliation with necessarily, because I was a date and a distance that worked for me. But I resonated with their mission when I read about it, and I was more than willing to fundraise for them, but I just didn't know much about the organization. And I was actually really hoping they would send me materials that would help educate me and that I could share. But I got 2 emails in 6 weeks, and both of those emails were just asking me to sign up for a fundraising page and telling me how to sign up for a fundraising page. I got no help on how to actually do it. I got no materials. And I think if we all think about ourselves and how would you respond if that's what you got? I can tell you how I responded. I'm busy. I work full time. I'm a mom. I do consulting with other nonprofits on the side. I am also a serious runner. So my plate feels really, really full. And so telling me to go on your website, look you up, read about your mission, find fun stories to share with my social media friends and that kind of thing, that's a really, really big ask. So I'm sure I sound like quite a few of you. So what I like to think about in creating these peer-to-peer campaigns is, if I was talking to myself, would I actually do the things I'm asking? So that's something I'll come back to quite a lot during this campaign, or during this class. So talking about preparing your campaign, this is the basics, right? So if you've been doing this for a while, you might have a sense of how this works for your organization. But if you haven't, if you're just getting started out, this is some information about how to get going. So picking a goal, and I mean a financial goal. How much money are you shooting for in the first place? It a little bit depends on how long you want the campaign to run, but it also requires a little thinking about who your audience is and who you think you can recruit. And I'll talk about who you can recruit in a little bit too. If it's your first time, my advice is pick a goal that feels both ambitious but achievable. So something I have looked at with other nonprofits that I've consulted with who are just getting into this for the first time, what I try to do is look at, is there another comparable event that maybe isn't peer-to-peer, but how many people purchase tickets to the gala or something like that. You want to think about perhaps pulling a list of who are those people who have donated every year for the past 3 years. Those are probably good candidates for folks that would sign up. And so how much total is that? And then maybe multiply it by 2 and assume they're all going to recruit a friend. So you want it to be ambitious, but it also think about making it achievable. And the reason it really needs to be achievable is success leads to success, right? If your goal is to raise $25,000, but you want to do a reach goal and you set it at $30,000, those participants are going to hit that $25,000, but they're going to feel bad because they're going to feel like they didn't go far enough for you. If your goal is more like 20,000 because you think you can hit 25,000, but you want to make it achievable, then you set it at 20, and then your supporters raise you 25,000, and yay, we went over our goal. What a big success story. Woohoo, let's do it again next year. So think about that as you're setting your goal, because I know a lot of folks want to just, oh, we're gonna go strong right out of the gate. But think about what's achievable as well, because achieving that goal or not is pretty critical to how people feel about how the campaign went. Oh no. Let's see. Whoopsies. So if you're a few years in, what I would suggest is assuming you're going to achieve at least industry baseline growth for your event. So after your first year, add 5%. According to Giving USA 2020, that's about what industry baseline growth was. So take what you raised, add 5%, you know, vet that internally. Do we actually think we have the ability to grow that much? Because again, success leads to success. But again, you don't want to overshoot on your estimation. If you've been going a while, then I would suggest that you look at trends. So averaging your growth rate year after year. So after about 5 years, you've got some good data. So looking at how much did you grow each year, and then averaging that, and then using that to project out. The one thing I would caution, because I've had to do this personally in my work, take out outlier years. And what I mean by that is things where some external something impacted your fundraising results. I say this, I've experienced it because I've worked with a lot of progressive advocacy groups, and year-end 2016, when Trump got elected, a lot of progressive advocacy groups got this huge influx of donations. But I don't know a single development person at a progressive advocacy group that was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna just keep projecting from 2015 to 2016. Yeah, that's a normal growth year. So what I've done working with organizations like that is we just kind of take that year out and average the rest of the years, because that is gonna throw off your data somewhat. Now, for every rule, there's a reason to break it, right? At least that's the way I see things. If it's an emergency fundraiser, your goal is your need. I think there's no reason to think about what's achievable, what's doable, what's realistic. When there's an emergency, you need to just state your need. I think you need to say it loud, you need to say it proud. And it shows that you actually need to accomplish a very specific thing for your community. So I think that's not, I think people understand when it's an emergency fundraiser, you say, this is how much we need to do this thing, and the community wants to get you there. And I think everybody feel, if you don't hit that number, it just demonstrates that there's still need that's unmet in your community, and people are gonna keep working. Personally, I'm guessing a lot of us are thinking about peer-to-peer right now more in this emergency sense. I know a lot of organizations are losing revenue. Like I said, I work for a cinema, so we aren't getting tickets or concession sales right now, so our income looks radically different right now. By the same token, I know food pantries and those kinds of direct service relief efforts, you're seeing a need grow exponentially. So I think really being clear on what your need is, setting that goal and explaining it well in your materials is helpful, and it's motivating to people. So that's what I have to say about picking your goals. So now, as far as timeline, I always factor in prep time into campaigns, or at least I try to. To me, the worst feeling is being in the middle of a campaign and being like, oh, I'm supposed to send an email tomorrow and I haven't even drafted it and I haven't vetted it by anybody. It's not a great feeling. So prep time. I am a big advocate for creating all your campaign materials at once. That doesn't mean that they're done and written in stone, but it means you've been able to create them all together to create a cohesive narrative for the whole campaign. And prep time, I think, varies. I think if you can be super, super focused on this campaign, then your prep time only needs to be a couple weeks. If you wear 20 different hats at your organization and this is something you can focus on 2 hours a day, it might take you more like 2 months to craft all the materials that you're gonna need. But it really depends on how many hats you wear. Pre-launch. So I like to think about a campaign starting before it actually launches and ending after it actually ends. So you want to put some time into this to prime your audience for a couple weeks at least, maybe a couple months if it's a big campaign, if you have the time. This is the time to lay some groundwork. Sending emails to your supporters about the need in your community, sending out emails reminding them how important they are to your mission, especially if it's your first time laying that groundwork of this is why I need you, this is why I need you, so that when they get that call to action, they know why you're asking them to do this for them or for you. If it's an annual event, what I like to do is a few weeks before I'm getting ready to launch it, I like to send some prep emails that remind participants and remind donors that, hey, last year you participated in or you gave to this event that we had, and here are some success stories from the past year that we were able to accomplish because you participated, because you gave. So I like that structure just because, again, then when you say, hey, do you want to sign up again, they'll remember that email, hopefully they read it, that says, you know, this is what we were able to accomplish because of you. Then pre-launch fundraising. Also, I like to, if you can, a few weeks to a month ahead of your launch, I like to do a quiet phase of our peer-to-peer campaign. So a lot of us are familiar with, you know, a major project campaign or a capital campaign. You tend to want to do a quiet phase where you're asking individual donors or that's where you're securing your grants, so that when you announce your capital campaign, for example, you've already got quite a lot in the thermometer, right? We seem to not apply that same logic to peer-to-peer. So taking that logic and applying it to peer-to-peer, that's something I like to do. Again, if you've been in it for a while, going back to your biggest fundraisers and saying, hey, I'm gonna give you a head start. Can you sign up? Can you raise some funds for us? Before we get started. I also like to have my staff all signed up and on the peer-to-peer campaign before it goes public, just so people see faces that they recognize when they hit the page when we launch. So think about how to do a quiet phase of a peer-to-peer campaign. So that's giving your best participants some lead time, or if it's your first time, give your staff some lead time, maybe pick a few key donors or volunteers who you think would be successful, and get them going a few weeks before the project starts. Excuse me. Then launch, that's go time. There's kind of a launch, you send a launch email to say, hey, we're doing this thing, will you sign up? But also you want to think about how you extend that enthusiasm and excitement for a while. This is going to be something we're going to talk about a little more in the second class. I'll go into that a little bit more later. The fundraising phase, that's where you're actively fundraising, your participants are fundraising. And this is the part where I think we think a lot about the launch. I think we think a lot about the ending event. And I think in between, we're just expecting people to be out there fundraising for us. But where I see the best results is when you're supporting people, when you're checking in with them, when you're coaching them through the process. It takes a lot more effort on our side, but you get results that I think are requisite to that effort. Then the deadline is when the fundraising ends. It's usually one day. And then the last thing is post-event. So I know at the end of campaigns, I'm always really tired. I'm worn out. We've hit our goal. Woohoo, I'm done. I'm ready to put my feet up. But I've slowly learned over 11 years in fundraising that when you have an event, it doesn't end with the event. When you're the fundraiser, it takes a few more weeks. You've got to get the thank yous out. You've got to get really priming people to be excited about doing it again the next year, so they don't just do it and then say, okay, that was nice, bye, and just totally forget about it. You want to keep those warm, fuzzy feelings going for a while after the event to make sure people come back. Just a quick note on types of peer-to-peer. I think a lot of folks, when we think about peer-to-peer, we're thinking about event-based peer-to-peer, so races, walks, polar bear plunge, that's my experience with peer-to-peer, all those kinds of things. And right now we're probably looking at a lot more virtual events. Then there are giving days and projects. We all know Giving Tuesday, I think. But capital campaigns is something that I will talk about a little bit later. I've had a lot of success doing kind of peer-to-peer-esque fundraising in a capital campaign. And then there are do-it-yourself or third-party peer-to-peer fundraisers, and those are more, I think we're familiar with those from Facebook and those kinds of things where your supporters kind of do it for you. But it's good to think about how can you create an infrastructure for that. So that's somewhere, I'm not gonna go deep into detail on this, but one organization that I've worked for, we created all of the campaign materials for a traditional peer-to-peer, except that it was a fundraising guide meant for if it's your birthday, your wedding, whatever, here's how to do it. So we put all these materials that I'm gonna talk about into a packet and put that on our website with a, here's how to sign up for this. To let people do it on their own terms, but we had the resources there to support them just like we would for a peer-to-peer that we ran ourselves. So picking an end date and whether or not to make it an event. So again, here I'm talking about in normal times. So the argument to do an event, I think events drive a lot of deadline energy. And the event can reflect your organization. It can be this really nice rah, you all did this great thing and now we're here together and we get to celebrate. I think that again, it does the work for you of the warm fuzzies and that kind of thing. So I really like ending peer-to-peer with an event. Fun runs, like I said, a peer-to-peer polar bear plunge is what I have the most experience with. As far as running the campaign. But like I said, I'm a runner, so I've participated in a lot of 5K fun runs for different nonprofits. So I think the events are really, really fun and motivating. You could also use a celebration event. I'm gonna talk later about using an anniversary as a deadline for a peer-to-peer. That was quite fun and pretty effective. Or a special performance, a preview of an upcoming performance, perhaps for a performing arts organization. So there are lots of options. You don't have to do a 5K if that's not really the feel of your organization. There are other ways to eventize peer-to-peer fundraising. The arguments to not eventize, if Google Slides wants to do this for me, there we go. Sorry, everybody. The computer goes real slow for a little bit. So the arguments not to eventize, as we all know as fundraisers, events subtract from your net by adding a cost, right? So that's one reason not to eventize. But the downside is you do kind of have an arbitrary end date unless you can link it to something really important with your organization. A lot of folks do use giving days as those ending things. My only caution on holidays or year end or giving days is you have a lot of competition and you're way more likely to get lost in the noise. Whereas if you pick your organization's founding date or a special anniversary or Rare Disease Day or something like that that's relevant to your mission, that you're more likely to stand out because you're going to be the only one using that day, whereas Giving Tuesday, everybody and their mother is fundraising on Giving Tuesday. So a note on COVID and events. COVID doesn't mean that events can't happen. I think a lot of us are realizing that now that we're a few months in, but a lot of organizations are taking their events digital, figuring out how to use social media. I wanted to give one example of something I've personally participated in that I thought was done really, really well. Again, runner, it was a virtual 5K. And I'm liking to do those right now just because I want to give back to the community, but it gives me an excuse to, actually roll out of bed and run during the day. The best experience I've had was with one that you signed up. They had a running coach create a training plan from the deadline to sign up to the 5K so that you actually had a running plan for your participants, which felt really nice to me. And then they mailed out the running bib and a medal to arrive a day or two before the race, which was fun because it felt like a real race thing, pinning on putting on the bib. And then a lot of it, they took social. They had a Facebook group for all of their participants where you could talk about your training or talk about getting ready to run or whatever. And then they had a hashtag that we were all supposed to post our race stats on Facebook and use their hashtag, and they were commenting on it. And it really, you know, for me, the camaraderie of a race is just really fun. Runners are really nice people, and I just like that. And so I thought they did a really thorough job of thinking through, like, what are the things people love about this event, and how do we recreate that in a digital space? So those are just some ideas. But yeah, you can definitely still do events in a virtual space that are not, you know, everybody staring at each other in Zoom. So just something to think about. Just a note on peer-to-peer for capital campaigns. Again, all of the principles I'm going to talk about in the latter half of this apply to any peer-to-peer, but using it for a capital campaign can be really powerful. For obvious reasons, you want to use it for the public portion of your capital campaign when you've applied for the grants, when you've gotten the big major gifts, that kind of thing, when you're ready to kind of get into the smaller gifts for a capital campaign. You can do a traditional peer-to-peer structure for the campaign. I think that would work well. For example, as a school, I could see that definitely working well for a peer-to-peer campaign when you've asked your major donor alumni, major donor parents, you've secured the grants, then launching a public peer-to-peer, maybe with a 5K, maybe with a groundbreaking event, something like that, that you have to end the event. But getting students, alumni, parents on this peer-to-peer thing to ask for money for their school for some exciting new project or whatever it is, that's definitely a way that you can incorporate peer-to-peer into a capital campaign in a more traditional way. I have also used peer-to-peer, just kind of modifying the concept a little bit to solicit bigger gifts. This is something we did with the Old Greenbelt Theater. We did our Save Me a Seat campaign. So we were historic cinema. It was originally built in 1938, and it was owned by a for-profit for a very long time that renovated it in the 80s and ripped out everything historic about the theater and just made it just like another multiplex auditorium. And so we wanted to kind of restore it back to the way it would have originally looked. And so once we got bids, we found out that would be about $100,000 to do. So then we divided that by how many seats were in the auditorium, and we figured out that it would cost roughly $250 per seat. And so that is how we messaged the campaign, is for $250, you get your name on a plaque on a seat, and we called it our Save Me a Seat campaign. But since we had the kind of that floor to have your name on a plaque, we didn't want to do a traditional peer-to-peer where we'd get $5 donations, $10 donations. But what we did was we made it a campaign that was easy to share. And the campaign, while it wasn't a traditional peer-to-peer in that folks asked their friends to donate to them, our autoresponder from the program was, hey, great, now you've saved your seat. Can you tell 5 of your friends to save their seat? And so it was kind of a spread the word, let everybody know your name is going to be in the theater so that other people want their names in the theater. And we ran it through CauseVox, so it felt very peer-to-peer. And we knew that would work because we work in a really pretty tight-knit community, and so we knew that there would be kind of this competition factor when we added this kind of semi-peer-to-peer feel to it. So that's just a note on capital campaigns. You can do a traditional peer-to-peer, or you can kind of modify the structure a little bit. And if you're thinking about doing that for a capital campaign, I'd be more than happy to talk to you more about how you can make that work. Once again, there we go. So now talking about creating campaign materials. So this is going to be the bulk of what I want to talk to you all about today, is all the things that create this cohesive experience for your participants. So that's your fundraising site. It's a fundraising guide, social media kit. I love doing coaching emails. I don't think they're very standard in peer-to-peer events, but I think they can really make a huge difference. There's recruiting materials, and then of course you want to think about your post-event materials. So things to keep in mind as you're designing, and I'm going to take a quick breath here. All right. To keep in mind as you design, how do you create a through line from the first communication that primes people to the event, for the event, to this final post-campaign email, to the thank you email, right? This needs to feel like some cohesive thing. You're taking them on a journey. This should be an experience, and it should be a really fun experience. So my main recommendation to make this happen is to draft everything all at once. I like to do this for any campaign, but I think it's particularly important for peer-to-peer because there can be so many components to it. Draft it all at once, and then literally, this is what I do every time. I print it all out and I lay it out on my desk, and I say, this is the first thing this person's gonna see, and then this is the next thing they're gonna see, and this is the next thing they're gonna see. And does this tell a super cohesive story? Does this take me down a path? So one way to think about it, that you send your launch email, they click on the email, they sign up on the site, they get an autoresponder when they sign up that says, thanks for signing up, here's the first thing to do. Then a day later, they get an email with, hey, you did this thing yesterday, can you do that again? Or can you do this next thing? So making it build on itself and make it feel like you're pulling them along is really important. It should feel cohesive in terms of step-by-step instruction, but also messaging and themes. So I talked a little bit about Old Greenbelt Theater's Save Me a Seat campaign. We were renovating back to how the theater would have looked back in the 1940s. So we picked a bunch of classical 1940s films, and we used those in lots of our marketing materials. So the launch video for the campaign was actually a splicing together of a bunch of classic films, of people sitting down or asking people to sit down or thanking people for pulling out a seat or things like that, which was very clever and made by one of our interns, which was a lot of fun. And then the launch email, all of our launch materials started with, frankly, my dear, it's time for new seats. And so we had that classic Hollywood line. Then all of the thank you notes when people donated started with, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship. And then we did a thank you video after the campaign closed. That again, it was classic film scenes with people thanking people for things. And then it ended with that scene from Casablanca. I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship. And so when all of those materials were set end to end, it had not only led them through step by step what we needed them to do, but also had this messaging and themes that made it kind of a richer experience. I am not going to talk about how to write fundraising materials. I will send you to Tom Ahern's book. It's called How to Write Fundraising Materials That Raise More Money. I can't recommend that book highly enough. I'll stay here for a minute while you write down the title. It's a wonderful book. I think I read it in 2 hours, and I read it in 2 hours 10 years ago, and I still refer back to it almost every time I write something. So, so definitely it's a great way to learn how to write good, convincing, persuasive fundraising copy. So I would just lead you to that for that element. So again, you have two primary growth options for peer-to-peer: more participants every year, or same number of people raising more money. And the more you can make the process feel kind of individualized to each participant, the more you can make it easy for them. The more you can say, I like to think of it as sending them an email and say, hey, could you do this? And then the next email says, awesome, you did that. Thank you so much. Here, can you do this? And just giving them one more thing to do. And And I know that feels a little overwhelming, right? You're thinking, oh my gosh, what do I have to do? It's actually pretty easy if you can make it, if you can make everything cohesive and pull it through, it's gonna feel personalized to each person. So your fundraising site, first and foremost, this is your hub. You want to have all of your materials and information for donors and for participants in this place. This is a CauseVox site, and I know we said this will apply to any any peer-to-peer site, but CauseVox makes it really easy for you to have all the things you should have. Video header, I love the video headers. I think that's crucial. I love how slick and clean CauseVox is in the top, just all of the data you need. But the site, whether you use CauseVox or somebody else, the site should be very, very easy to navigate for participants and for donors, because if there's any stage of confusion, you get a lot of drop off. And when people sign up, you should make sure that they get some sort of automated, immediate, welcome, here's the first thing I want you to do. For me, it's usually welcome, thank you so much for signing up. Can you make a donation to yourself, to your own campaign? And here's why that's important, because you're showing you're not only committed to us by participating in this event, but you're showing that you're committed, your dollars are here. And so that's an endorsement when you start reaching out to friends and family to fund your campaign, that you really believe in us too. So that's normally my first step. That doesn't have to be your first step. That's normally my first step. You also want to link all your fundraising materials into this, the homepage structure somewhere. So all of the other materials we're going to talk about, you want to make sure they're linked here so it's easy for participants to find if they lose the email that it's all in or something like that. I think a compelling pitch is really important as well, and I think a video definitely helps with that. And when it comes to video, it really doesn't have to be high quality. I think right now, if everybody's working from home, doing kind of a Zoom, just having a Zoom thing where each of your staff members says a scripted line or something, and you just record it and that's what you put up. It doesn't have to be fancy. It just needs to be compelling. It needs to make your participants say, oh yeah, that looks like something that's going to be fun to do. And so having it reflect your event is really nice. Like I said, the Old Greenbelt Theater, we did a thing where it was splicing lots of old film clips. I think that was fun and people really, really loved it. We got tons of people. It went viral, at least in our community, because people just really had a lot of fun with it, with the video. And so that got shared, and that, you know, that helps get participants, that helps get donors. But whatever you're doing, make the video reflect kind of the feel of what you're trying to accomplish in the event or in the peer-to-peer fundraiser. So the next thing is a fundraising guide. This is one of the things, normally I have this linked in the welcome email to participants. So it says, welcome, thanks so much. Can you go back and make a donation to your campaign? Also, the next thing you need to do after you do this is download your fundraising guide, because it's going to make this whole thing really easy for you. So this is the first thing I really want my participants to read, is this fundraising guide. The reason I came up with a fundraising guide was when I was planning my first peer-to-peer event. It was with an organization that had grown pretty significantly in the first few years, but they were really feeling like they were plateauing on the event and they wanted to get it growing again. And they had gone the route of, we're just gonna recruit and recruit and recruit, and we're gonna put all of our effort into getting people signed up, and after that, dead silence till the event. And so I started emailing participants, both those that had done really well and those who hadn't done so well, particularly those who were committed volunteers and hadn't done very well, just to ask them, you know, what do you need? What would you like to see from us? And this is something I would recommend you do with participants. If you've done it a time or two and you want to make it better, talk to your participants. Like, they really, really do, they support you, they want you to succeed. And so I found that I think everybody I reached out to said, yes, I want to talk to you. I want to talk to you about how to make this better for me. So that's interview your participants is huge. But when I interviewed them, what I kept hearing was the organization only seems to care that I sign up. They don't care what I do after that. I got very little support. I'm not a fundraiser. I don't know how to do this, but you're just expecting me to know. And the one thing I heard from at least 3 people was, don't make me come up with content. I'm not an expert in your subject matter. I care about your organization because I care about climate change, but I'm not in this world. I don't know how to create the content. So that gave rise to this fundraising guide and the social media toolkit that I'm going to show you in a second. But what you want the fundraising guide to be is a step-by-step, succinct way to pull them through everything. So this that you see on the screen, this Fundraising Made Easy, this is more or less my formula. If you're going to do nothing else, do these 5 things. So create your fundraising page, make the first donation to your fundraising page. And then again, using kind of the principles of major gifts fundraising and bringing that into peer-to-peer, ask your closest friends and family first. Ask the people who are most likely to give to you and give big gifts. Ask for those people first, and do it offline. Do it in this quiet way. Email them or call them and do it offline, so that this is your participants' quiet phase, right? So you're trying to get them successful in the background before they broadcast it out to social media. Hey, I'm doing this 5K, support me, donate to me. But I've got no money, nobody's donated to me. It's again, that success gets success, right? And so if you have a friend who signed up for a 5K and they're broadcasting it on social media and they haven't raised a dime and they haven't donated to themselves, are they really serious about this? Do I really want to give them 25 bucks? That kind of feeling is what you're trying to avoid, right? But when I did a 5K and I asked my mom and my aunt and uncle and my in-laws to donate to my 5K first, I then didn't post it to my Facebook until I had about $200 and was like, look guys, I'm trying to raise $500 and I'm almost halfway there. Can you keep giving? And then, shot past my goal pretty quickly. So it's the same concept. Just take general fundraising concepts and how can you teach those in bite-sized slices to your participants. So this is how I like to set up the toolkit in the fundraising guide, and then everything else is based on this process for me. It's all the coaching emails, all of that comes from this. And it can be as simple or as detailed as you want. After this, Candace is going to send you a sample packet that I put together. The CCAN Polar Bear Plunge guide is in there, and it's many, many, many pages long because we wanted to give lots of information to our participants because they wanted it. That's a lot of what we heard was like, I want more, I want more, I want more. As a counterpoint to that, I also included a guide that I put together for the Greenbelt Nursery School, which is where my daughter goes to preschool. And it's really simple. I think it's 8 pages long. It still gets most of the major points across, but it's a much, much simpler guide. We used that for a month-long fundraiser for my daughter's school that had raised, I think, $700 in the past. And all we did was send out this fundraising guide. And that year we raised $3,000. So, I mean, it's a tiny school. They didn't need a lot. $3,000 was huge. And so it was exciting to do that and know that just all we needed to do was add that fundraising guide, and we raised more than triple what they had raised ever before. So it doesn't have to be crazy detailed. Social media toolkit. So this is something, again, I kept hearing in my interviews with peer-to-peer participants, you're the experts. Why do I need to figure out how to market your organization? And one person even pointed out, you promote your organization all day. I don't. So why are you making me do your job? And I thought that was a very fair point. So we created a ton of different infographics. We took a bunch of our best photos and we put that all together into a social media toolkit. This is also linked in the packet that Candace is going to share with you. Can everybody see my screen? I hope. But we had tips for social media outreach, Giving Tuesday specific things, funny posts. We had these GIFs that we thought were great. And then we had posts about our organization, so mission driven. Here's what we accomplished. This is what we're trying to accomplish with this money, that kind of thing. And we have, as you'll see, we have photos from our organization. We have impact, infographics, all that kind of stuff. And we had them optimized for Facebook and Instagram and for Twitter so that people could use it on the platform that they preferred. And then we even did these climate fact posts. So if people weren't necessarily crazy about our organization, but cared about climate change, and that's why they were doing this, then we had more things they could use on climate. So that's our social media toolkit. So yeah, what I recommend, mission-driven posts, impact posts, fact posts, but don't forget light and funny. This is one of my favorites, and this is one of the most used that we saw. So we were doing this polar bear plunge right around the same time Game of Thrones was starting that year, and so so we linked the two, and that was a lot of fun. Okay, so coaching emails. This for me was really critical. It starts with the first responder when they sign up. So that one, I like to have it say, you know, thank you so much for signing up. I want you to go back and donate to yourself, and then please download this fundraising guide. So that was the first thing that we do with the coaching emails. So make the welcome email, don't just say welcome, thanks for signing up, but give them one specific task to do. And then that's what our coaching emails kept doing. So after that, you have two options. You can automate emails in a series after the sign up if you have that kind of tech savviness, to do, you know, okay, 2 days after that, they get this, and then a week after that, they get this, and then a month after that, they get this. So you can automate that kind of series. Or this is what I've done in the past, sending weekly tips. So you add the participants as you go. It's not necessarily along the participant's personal journey, but you just send one email a week. I like to send those Friday, like around lunchtime, hoping that I get them meandering through their inbox during Friday at lunch and ask them to do something over the weekend. So the coaching emails, they need to be clear, they need to give examples, and they need to give very thorough instructions, because again, confusions mean people aren't going to do it. And also throughout the process, check in with your top performers. This is something we'll talk a little bit more about next time, but checking in with your top performers to say like, wow, I saw you just blasted past your goal. How did you do that? What was your tip? Because I learned more asking my participants how they blasted past their goals than I could have ever come up with myself. So this is an example of one of the coaching emails that we had. So you'll see the panel on the far left. It's thank you for signing up to take the plunge. That was the first email that we sent out. And so it was just some basic information about the prior year, how we were doing relative to the prior year. And then it just said, if there's anything else you need, let us know, but otherwise you're gonna get these every week. Our plunge tip of the week was always a really easy, quick thing for them to do. It was a very specific thing. So as you'll see in this one, it's check out our Who to Ask document. It's a little thing that we put together that you'll see a link to in the samples that Candace is gonna send out. But yeah, that's something that, it's a specific thing, download this and then add people to the list. And then use our email template to email them to invite them to support you. I did a Take the Plunge Extra Challenge, which was just one additional tip. But again, I wanted to make sure that that felt like an above and beyond thing. So then the other coaching emails followed more of this kind of pattern. There would be an intro from me that was just rah, rah, thanks, you're amazing. And then the tip of the week, I started every once in a while putting in a tip from a fellow plunger, which were things that I was getting as I was checking in with participants. I feel like that's a helpful thing to do. People know you're a fundraiser. They know you know how to fundraise. They want to hear from people who don't know how to fundraise. And so, like I said, there were some really creative things that I learned or that people were doing. And then again, the Take the Plunge Extra Challenge, go above and beyond. And then we also, as you'll see, I've started putting sponsors into there with offers for our participants and that kind of thing. So it was, again, it was something that made them want to open the email was, oh, you get a discount at Founding Farmers if you open your email, that kind of thing. So, so one other thing you can think about. Oh, sorry, guys. Whoa. Okay, so very quickly, recruiting emails and your launch emails. I'm going to talk a lot more about this next time because this is more in the activating your event side. But priming emails, as I talked about before, a few weeks before you're about to launch, some priming emails about why this event is important, or if you've done it before, or just why donors are important if you haven't done one and you're about to launch one. So some priming emails. Then pre-launch emails to prior participants. Like I said, I like to kind of soft launch it to our best fundraisers from the prior year to get them going early. And then let's talk about who, maybe, if Google wants to let me do this, who are gonna be your best fundraisers. So if you've never done this before and you have no idea who to get involved with this, think about, I like first and foremost, your volunteers. Your volunteers already do a lot for you. If you have a good volunteer program, asking your volunteers to start doing this is an obvious choice, especially if it's something that they regularly do, that their friends and family know. It's gonna feel like a normal extension for them to just start asking for money for you. The next thing is really active social media followers. Those are the people who love being on Facebook, love being on Twitter or Instagram, what have you. I think your really active social media followers are the folks who are most gonna wanna share this anyway, that you know that they're super active. They're gonna share the things you're asking them to share. And so your top social media followers are good people to ask to sign up early. If you're a membership organization, then members, for the Old Greenbelt Theater, we launched our Save Me a Seat earlier to members than to the general public, and we also hit our members a lot harder with, please participate in this campaign, please participate in this campaign, a lot harder than the general public. And then last, I mean, anybody who gives you regular donations, again, look at who's given every year, the last 3 years, every year, the last 4 years. Those are going to be the people most likely, those are the most committed folks, right? And then when you get to your main launch, some sort of segmentation is really helpful. With CCAN, it was an organization based in Maryland, DC, and Virginia. So we segmented it out. So each of those states, we had different goals, obviously, for what we were going to do in those states with our campaigns each year. And so each of those states, people in those states, based on location, got an email that was like, we're doing this polar bear plunge. We want you to sign up so we can accomplish X, Y, and Z in Maryland, so we can accomplish X, Y, and Z in Virginia. Again, like I said, for the Old Greenbelt Theater, we messaged a lot more and hit our members a lot more than we did the general public, and the messaging was pretty different to the two groups. And then make sure your website, your emails, your social media all give the same message when you're launching. So think about it beforehand so that if I get your launch email and I hit your homepage, make sure that that event is on your main homepage and is an easy thing to reach, because if you tell me to sign up, but then I forget to click on it, and then I'm thinking, oh, I'm gonna look up this organization on Google and find their website again, it's gonna lead them to the homepage. And so you wanna make sure when they hit the homepage, it's easy to get to your event. So just looking at everywhere somebody might hit within a week or two of the launch and making sure that it all leads to that event is a pretty critical thing as well. And then with the launch, it's not one and done. Send a few emails out. So do the main big launch, but then a week after and maybe a month after, send other recruiting emails to say, hey, remember, we're still doing this, we're still doing this. Just make sure to take off anybody who's signed up so that they don't get confused and think they haven't signed up. And then finally, post-event emails. For fundraisers, the day the event ends is not the day that you're done, right? Say it with me. The event ends, and 2 weeks after, it ends for me. So I do post-event emails to the participants to say, thanks, remember you raised this much money, that's so awesome, and we're gonna use that money to do X, Y, and Z. So thank you so much for doing this. For donors, I also did kind of a series. We did one that was kind of, thanks, here are the pictures. Just thanks for giving, here are some pictures. Then we did a thanks, here's where your money is going. And then the last email we sent was, thanks, do you want to sign up for our mailing list where you get advocacy action alerts? So we actually used the third email to try and pull people from the donation side to getting to action, really. And so what to include, especially for donors, pictures if they weren't there, the fundraising total, what we raised relative to the goal, and what you're going to do with the money, I think, are the key things. So you can see from, this is one of the emails we sent from CCAN, and it starts with, we did it on this date, this plunger, who you funded, so this was to the donors, this plunger jumped into the Potomac River along with nearly 200 other people. You're one of 2,000 people who gave, and you know, that's enough about us. I think you want to probably see pictures and then big giant link to a Flickr album that we'd put together. So we wanted to remind them who they supported, just to remind them they had a personal connection with us. And we wanted to give them some sense of how big the scope was, the scope of the event was. And so, yeah, we also, like I said, we really wanted to make sure that we included the name of the plunger that they gave to, so that they would remember, you know, why did I even do this? So in conclusion, for right now, for this first class, you need to think of yourself as the guide for your participants. Like, for a lot of people, fundraising is a really scary word. I know for us who are fundraisers, it's not, but for other people, it really does feel scary and big and intimidating. So make it easy and make it actionable. I've talked about this a little bit already, but if anything is complicated or takes a lot of time or is hard to act on, you're gonna lose them. And also make everything you're giving them actionable. Make sure the tips are things that go do this, and not a lot of fluff, because I feel like a lot of people just give me a task, just give me a task and tell me how to do it. So you're their guide for that. So just very quickly, class 2, maybe this slide is gonna work. I'm really sorry, you guys. Class 2, we're going to talk about executing your campaign. So I know I blitzed through the launch emails, but I'm going to talk a lot more about that. I'm also going to talk about how to make tweaks as you're going through your campaign, and then ways to drive more energy as you reach your goal date. And then I want to help you workshop your materials. So, oh, there we go. All right, so after this class ends, Candace is going to send out some sample materials. Please review them. I've got my email here, kemclaughlin87@gmail.com. If you have questions about those sample the sample materials, please feel free to ask me. And if you can send me some draft materials by May 26th, I'll be happy to give you some personal feedback on that. And I would love to have some sample materials from you all to workshop as part of class 2. But yeah, if you have any questions or anything, my email is right here. I would be happy to work with you. If you have stuff, if you have questions, just please feel free to reach out to me between now and the next class. And I think that's all I've got, Candace.
All right, thank you so much, Kelly. This was an amazing class that went over so many details. I know we're a little bit over time already, but I would like to take at least a few minutes to go over any questions of anyone in our class today. So feel free to send those over now if anyone has any pressing questions you want to chat about. And like Kelly said, I'll be sending over that email with all of those samples. So you'll get to view her toolkits and sample emails and everything to really give you some great examples to work off of when you're compiling your own. So please feel free to reach out. We're going to be sending along that email, and I'll include Kelly's email in our follow-up shortly. So you can just reach out to her with your own materials that you'd like her to review. So I'm going to allow Kimberly Allen is asking to talk. So Kimberly, what's your question?
Sorry. Hi. Thank you. This was great.
Oh, great.
So we are switching to this campaign because our gala for my client was canceled, and we can't host any live events when the reschedule was taking place. So we came up with this idea of a campaign that we want to kick off this summer, and then host a party on the date that the gala was rescheduled to, a virtual event.
Okay.
Invite people to be hosts, if you will, and then kind of create this whole virtual party thing. So I guess the point to my question is, cost or donation. Do you give people a place to start and say, you know, in order to be a host, it's going to be an X dollar investment? The client's concerned about asking people to raise a targeted amount. And is that something you'll talk about next week or next week or?
No, thanks for raising that question. I like to set, with CauseVox in particular, when you sign up for a campaign, you can set an automatic goal that's just what's set for all your participants. Okay. And so that's, you know, you can set that at 500 or 250 or, you know, whatever seems reasonable for your organization. For the CCAN campaign, we set that at 500. So whenever somebody logged in and just created a page, if they didn't do anything, it set their goal at 500.
Okay.
So I do that blanket for anybody just because otherwise, you know, a lot of people don't think about setting the goal or whatever. As far as if you're doing a host committee or replacement for a gala, when I've done galas and that kind of thing, we always had a set fundraising expectation for our gala hosts. Where what I did is we would generally have a host committee and then an honorary committee. So if there were people who we wanted their names and the name recognition for, we would put them on the honorary committee. And then anybody who we were expecting to fundraise was on the host committee. So sometimes that distinction can be helpful. I don't know if that's something that your client is concerned about, but like, yeah, if you're worried about asking somebody on when they're more in a honorary, we just want you to come to this event kind of thing and your name associated with the event, that's where an honorary committee gets you away from that. Okay. But if you're thinking about kind of moving what would be a normal gala onto a virtual space, then my personal feeling would be that a host committee and expecting them to raise a certain amount to be on the host committee it's a very reasonable expectation.
Okay. That's sort of where they have donors that have, you know, because we were scheduled in April, and so we pushed everything to September, and now it's just too sketchy, right? So the real question was, let's get people involved. I mean, they're dropping hundreds of dollars to attend an event, and I've been stressing that we need to be very transparent and communicate that what is the value this gala has for the like, why do you host a gala? Because it's going to it's your operating expense, right? It's the major money for these nonprofits. So I don't think it's outside the scope of reality to ask people who would normally spend, you know, $350 to attend an event. Maybe you have to scale that number a little bit, but the need is still there. So I guess that's what you were saying. There is a distinct need.
Sure.
So we just have to be transparent in communicating that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if you can put a dollar number to that need, that's motivating to people. Right. in particular, like I said, for the theater, we use this 250. Each seat is going to cost this. So if we can't get it, then, you know, we don't have enough seats, you know, is kind of the messaging. So I think if you can put the number to the need and make that feel tangible for people, that's very motivating. And that's where, you know, when I talk about the kind of priming emails for the campaign, before maybe you ask these folks to do that, sending a few emails about, this is the big need in our community. This is why we need these donors. Sending a few emails like that, and then hitting them with the like, hey, would you sign up and be one of those people to raise that money for us? It's a nice series of things that builds it up and primes them to say yes. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does, because that we said we would do kind of a communication thing early summer to let people know what's happening, how they're a healthcare. So this is a healthcare crisis that we're all living in. So I'm like, your timing is perfect. Now you need to tell people how you do all the things you say you do every single solitary year. Now you're actually doing it
Totally.
in public, right?
Thank you so much, Kimberly,
Thank
for
you.
the
I'm
great
sorry.
question.
Yeah,
No, no,
if you want to
this is
email me more
perfect.
questions, Kimberly, I'm happy to answer by email.
Yeah.
Thank you.
This will be great to kind of continue the conversation. I also have Susan here who has a couple of quick questions as well. So Susan, you're able to unmute yourself now.
Great, thanks. This is just incredible. Thank you. Yeah, a couple of quick questions here. This would be a first time for us doing this kind of campaign. We have such an incredibly engaged, active volunteer base across the city, but we're still a relatively small organization.
Okay.
And so I guess I'm wondering, like, what would be kind of a reasonable amount of participants to expect in a first-time effort here? You know, if we typically have about 200 donors in a year, and then about 100 to 150 very active volunteers who do amazing things in their community on behalf of this organization.
Yeah.
So there's that, and the timeline, because this is really the season for our walking and biking advocacy kind of work, you know, being outside in the nice weather. And it sounds like, to set this up well, you know, it benefits from having more time for each of the elements.
Yeah. Which is not to say you can't condense it. It's just my caution is more if you're going to do it and do it well, clear your plate for a couple weeks to create all the materials as much as you can, because these campaigns really benefit not necessarily from a ton of time, but lots and lots of attention to creating materials that are cohesive and comprehensive and that take them through a process. So it's not to say if you can clear your plate and spend 2 really intensive weeks, I don't see why you couldn't launch a campaign in 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
But certainly, like, it benefits from having a lot of time and attention to creating the materials. As far as number of participants, I think that's going to really, really depend on your organization. I think, at least my experience with volunteers and signing up for campaigns like this, I think at CCAN we tended to get like our really, really super duper committed volunteers. So the people who are volunteering like every single week, like those folks definitely signed up. The people who are a little more casual, that like showed up at a rally but maybe not to do door-to-door canvassing, those folks were significantly less likely to sign up. So honestly, if you're doing this for the first time and you really know your people, create a target list. I mean, go through your list of people and, okay, Jim, where's Jim with us right now? Okay, we think he's gonna sign up. And Judy, like Judy's been coming to everything recently. She's definitely gonna sign up. And oh, this person, we've lost touch. I don't know, it's probably more of a cold call right now. They probably won't sign up. And kind of setting your goals relative to that is also a helpful thing when you're just starting out, to not overshoot or put your expectations too high. Does that make sense?
very much. The last thing was, do you have rewards or prizes for people involved in this?
Yes, it depends. With CCAN, we did kind of tiered. So if you sign up and raise more than 0, you get a button. If you sign up and you raise over $250, you get a raffle ticket. When you get to $500, you get 3 raffle tickets. And we had some really cool prizes. One was a free year of community solar, which, was what all of our people wanted. And we had a bike from REI and stuff like that. So, so if you have some really good raffle prizes and you can do that kind of thing, we did have a prize for top fundraiser. I always do that for peer-to-peer campaigns because your competitive people go bananas over that. So to use my daughter's preschool as example, we didn't have prizes for tiers, but we did do top fundraiser prize, and it was a 2-hour massage for a mom of a preschooler. So that was very coveted. And so moms were very, very competitive trying to get that 2-hour massage. So you can do it with prizes based on tiers. As soon as you raise this much, you get this thing. Or you could just do like your top 3 fundraisers, get something and create some competition that way.
Great.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kelly, for going into all of that. And thanks, Susan, for the great questions. And we also have Emily, who asked, just following up on a question being asked, at what point would you recommend doing a peer-to-peer campaign? Is it a certain number of supporters, longevity of organization? They're just starting out and have a handful of supporters.
Cool. I haven't used it for smaller organizations, but certainly the Old Greenbelt Theater, we as a nonprofit operator of that, we've only been in existence for 5 years now. And we ran that campaign when we had only been in existence for 3 years, and we raised over $100,000 with that. So there's nothing to say that a new organization can't do really well with it. I'm happy to email with you and talk about what might be reasonable or a strategy, because I think it really depends on how many people are willing to go to bat for you and be participants. So I think if you've only got 2 or 3 folks, maybe you want to wait and build your base up a little bit more. But I think if you've got a dozen people who are pretty gung-ho about your mission, I think even that small amount you can definitely do stuff with. So yeah, it might be scaled down, moderate expectations, but yeah, I think peer-to-peer you can do at any point. I mean, my daughter's preschool, it was 8 moms. It was 8 moms fundraising for the preschool. So it really, and we raised $3,000 between the 8 of us. So, it can be small and still get some decent results. Totally.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Kelly, for spending the extra time chatting with our attendees today. Thank you, everyone, for attending. I know we have a couple more questions, I think. We're happy to answer those over email. So our next class is next Thursday. Feel free to send your materials to Kelly for review through the 26th. And yeah, looking forward to our next class. Thank you so much, Kelly.
Yeah, thank you, Candace. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thanks for everybody hanging on still. This is great. Okay, take care, everybody.
Bye.
Have a good rest of your day. Bye.